Hi, my name is Tori Horde. I'm a learning and development consultant, and I recently shared this project at DevLearn's Demo Fest, and I wanted to share it here and then kind of break it down a little bit more because there were so many questions and a lot of people were interested on how they can implement this in their own companies or organizations. And so I'm going to share the whole process and a little bit more of the details behind everything. So I'm using make.com here. This is a website for automations and also developing AI agents and things like that. So I first wanted to start out with a form, and I'm going to show you this form. So here we have a training intake form, and I've included about 14 questions that I would typically ask just before I get on the phone or get in person with somebody kind of asking about what their project is. This gives people a chance to kind of let me know what their project is, what their estimated deadline is, what type of training this is, the priority level that they're looking for, and a lot of other things that I would like to know as a leader in an organization. So when somebody completes this form, automatically it's going to go through the rest of this process. And so once the form is completed, you're going to have an intake response Google Sheet or whatever sheet spreadsheet system that you're using. So here it populates all of that information. And then at the same time, it's also going to send me a message in Slack. It looks a little bit different in Slack because I've selected a very specific message that I wanted it to send me. So, for example, this person from whichever department they're in submitted an intake request. This request is medium priority with an estimated completion of this date. That's really all the information that I wanted to know at first glance because this is notifying me in my communication tool that I use on the daily basis. So rather than having to go into that Google Sheet and kind of look at all of those fields, I can just get a quick glance at what's going on and who's submitting a intake request. I also like this because it can be an easy way to communicate with the team without you having to communicate. You can just have them in this channel or however you want to format it to automatically receive information, like a tiny bit of information about what's coming in. At the same time, it's also going to create a card in my project management system. So I use Trello and I created this intake management system where the card will populate in this intake list. And then you can go ahead and choose to put it into a certain part of your process. Maybe you have separate team members and then each one gets assigned each project. So that could be an option as well. And then the next thing that's going to happen is it's going to send a specific email to the requester. And so here is what this one looks like. I like this better than just having an automated Google form response go to them because it's very personalized and it feels custom. So we received your training request. It includes their name, what project it is that they've selected the project name to be, and it's officially been submitted. And then I give them a little bit more information about next steps and what to expect. And then I kind of sign off with the learning and development team. So this can come from your training inbox or from a specific person who's just kind of letting them know that their training request has been received. Now, the thing is, you can include this form on your website. You can include it on your portal. Maybe you just send out a link every once in a while to your subject matter experts or stakeholders who are needing to submit intake requests. Whatever that looks like, it's just a link or a button that can live somewhere to be easily accessed that then starts this entire process completely on its own. So then you just need to go in and assign the project. I really wanted to start with a basic automation workflow for this intake process. Let's dive into actually building this. So I'm going to go back into scenarios and I'm going to create a scenario. So the first thing you're going to see is this plus button here, and you can choose from a lot of different apps. And that's what I love about this tool is that it's really plug and play. Like you just click and you can figure it out pretty easily. And it includes so many different tools. So if you're looking at using Microsoft 365 Outlook or you're looking at Teams, there's a lot of different options here. So I'm just going to go ahead and search Typeform. I liked using Typeform because I like the aesthetic of the form rather than a Google form. It feels very custom, and I just preferred to use that one for this project. So here, I'm going to watch responses. So instantly I can watch the responses each time it's being submitted. Now I also am going to select a webhook. So I've already created these. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new webhook, and this is going to be training intake request. So now I want my Typeform connection, and this is going to be for a form. So in Typeform, I can go back over to my forms. I am just going to go ahead. This is the original one that I used. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it so that we can use that for this project. And then I'm going to go ahead and rename this to test. So now everything is exactly as it was in the first project. Now, the next thing I want to do before I connect it into my make.com scenario is to add an integration here. So here, I'm just going to select connect for Google Sheets and publish. I'm already connected, so this is something that you would do on your own to set it up. And I also want to create a new sheet for this example. So this is going to be training intake test. All right, and then I'm going to activate the integration. Now everything should work, and in my drive, I should have a new training intake test form. So you'll notice right at the beginning is that all of it looks kind of funky. So from here, I want to select convert to table within the formatting tab. So now easily I can see all of those separate items here, and it looks very clear. I can adjust them if needed, but it includes all 14 questions that I have. So there is my training intake form test sheet. So now when I go back into my make.com scenario, within the Typeform, I want to select that training intake form. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh this to make sure that I have that test one, and then I'm going to save it. So once I save it, I can start adding my Google Sheets to connect. So next I'm going to use Google Sheets, and I'm going to add a row. I don't want to update a row because then it will change the data from the previous rows. So I want to select update a row. Now I am going to search the spreadsheet. So I've already made the connection here. So you would have to do the same kind of thing where you select log in to your Google Sheets or whatever program that you're using. So here, I'm going to go ahead and search training intake test. That's the spreadsheet that we've selected. Now we also want to use the sheet name. So the first one that we have here is the correct one. Now you'll notice that all of the table contents, if I select that it has headers, which it does, all of those values will populate automatically, which is nice because you don't have to add those. Now all we have to do in order to get our data from our Typeform into those Google Sheet rows is select the responses. So here it says, please enter your full name. So here, these are our mappable answers from Typeform. We just want to match them correctly to where those are. So what is your email address? We're going to include that there. Department, role. I'm going to do this really quickly. Okay, now all of the mappable answers have been inputted into the rows, the columns, I guess. So we're going to start at row number 2, and then I'm going to select save. All right, now we have our Google Sheets mapped in our scenario. Next, we want to have an automated message sent in Slack. So we're going to go ahead and add another module. We're going to enter Slack, and then I want to send a message. So here I've already made the connection to Slack. So now I'm going to select a channel for my message to populate into. So this is going to be, you can have it be public channels, direct messages, whatever it needs to be. So here I have an intake request channel that I'm using, and this area here for text is what that message will actually be. So you can use mappable responses from your Typeform to be able to populate that specific message. So here I want it to be, first I want it to include their name, from, their department, has submitted an intake request. And then I want to say the priority level is high or whatever they've selected, and the estimated completion date, because it's always helpful to hear when people want things to be completed and kind of provide some change management if it needs to be done differently. Estimated completion date. Nope, that's estimated number of learners, desired completion date. Okay. So now I can click save and I have my Slack message populated. I'm going to add another module, and now I'm going to have it create a card in Trello. So now within Trello, I am going to create a card. I've already created the connection for Trello here, and then I'm going to select the board that I want to use, and I'm using intake request 2. Since I've already created this board, I'm going to go ahead and use that one. So now I have an intake list. So let me show you what this looks like. So intake request 2, I have it selected instead of the process, I have it selected, or I have it formatted for people on my team. So maybe I'm going to choose the project from the intake list and then go ahead and assign it to each of my team members once it comes in, and then they can add comments, resources, whatever they need to do, and then they can add it to a different part of the process potentially. So this is more of an example just for you to see kind of how that works. So now within our make.com, I'm using the correct board and the correct list. I can select a label that I want it to be populated into. So maybe I select yellow. And now the name. So there's 2 separate sections that you can use content for. So here you'll notice this is the name of the project or of the information that's coming in, and this is the description. So you can have 2 different things here, 2 different kind of like types of content. So this can be just the name of the project potentially, and this could be more of that content that automatically populates. So then you don't have to include access to the Typeform or access to that training intake request. It kind of is all populated for exactly what they need here. So within make.com, we're going to have to select what we want it to say. So let's say that in our Typeform responses, we want their name, from, their department, and I'm going to have this the same type of information here as Slack, just so that we can find it easily. The priority is this, and the estimated completion date is here. Okay. Now for the description, you might want to include some information. So I might just say client email, so that they can email them directly to set up that kickoff call if that's part of our process. I want to include the project title. I might want to include some information for them as the designers, just the estimated number of learners or their audience, just so that we can have an idea right off the bat if this is going out to a large amount of people. And then, so this question is if they already have content. So it's going to populate true or false. So you would just have to kind of tell your designers what that kind of means. And then this is the format that they already have their content in if this one is true. And then I'm just going to include the desired outcome here. And the desired mode of delivery, because it's helpful for me to kind of get an idea of what someone's expecting. How do they think this training should be delivered? Okay, so that description is going to include a lot more information than just the card. So now I can click save. And the last step here is just to create that custom message. So I'm going to go ahead and select email. I am going to send an email. And then I've already created the connection here. So this is the SMTP connection. So occasionally you're going to need to pull some like keys or tags from your different software programs. You also might find that you need an API key to be able to connect these different software tools, which is really easy. So we don't want to save this message. I want this to be to the email address that they have entered here. So this is their email. Here's their subject, intake request completed. Your content here is going to be in HTML format. So I typically always add breaks when I need to. So line breaks are really helpful. So I want to include their name, hi, name, comma, and then here I would include those breaks. I might include 2 breaks as well. We've received your for the project title. Okay, so I've included some information and I did forget to do some line breaks. So I'm going to do that here. And this may be too many breaks, but I think more is better than less. So we can adjust always. Okay, so now you can also include attachments here. So if you have a process that you're wanting to include or anything like that, infographic, that could be helpful. Maybe even a video, welcoming video. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, once we save our entire scenario here, it's going to populate automatically. So I am going to change this to run at regular intervals just because I want it to run when I plan it to run. So I'm going to go ahead and activate the scenario here and save it. So now when I get into that type form, I want to go ahead and share it so that I can complete it and you can see how everything populates. So here's my type form. This is client or stakeholder point of view. So we're going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to insert my full name. So I'm using my own name and all of my information. So hopefully that shouldn't be confusing. We can find the content pretty easily. So the department that I'm in, maybe I am in operations and I am the director of ops potentially. Project title is, so we're having a new POS system potentially. And what is the main purpose of this training? So this is going to be new product, service, or process rollout. So these kind of options will change based on your business, but this is a good example for you. So who needs this training? We're going to go ahead and say all employees are going to need this, and we're going to have to launch this franchise-wide potentially. So let's do 600 plus because we have a pretty large group. So let's do a completion date of May 20th, 2026. And so we've got a few months. So this is a low priority level. And do you already have content? No, we're kind of building that out. The software is being built as we speak. So we are going to, we don't have any content. So we're just going to select subject matter expert knowledge only. And what should the learners be able to do after this training? So I want them to be able to successfully use the POS system with guests. So just having this question in, I know it's more of a learning and development kind of question. So people on our side of the team that would be using this type of question, but it's helpful to see from their perspective as the stakeholder or the subject matter expert, what are they wanting their audience to really do at the end of this training? So it's helpful if you don't ask that, just to have that kind of data here. And then how do you think this training should be delivered? So we want to have it launched franchise wide and we need to have it done quick. So we're going to do the self-paced e-learning and video or combination of both. So now I've finished the type form. Now I'm going to go into make.com and it is just listening for when that type form has been completed to wait for new responses. So I had it do 15-minute intervals, but you'll see that it has, without me doing anything, it has already populated all of that information here. So here's my desired completion date. All of that information is automatically populated into my sheet, which is helpful. Now let's see if it did everything else, because that was just the integration piece of it. I don't expect that it will have done the full scenario. So let's go ahead and check Slack. Sales, nope. So let's go ahead and push our scenario to run. So you saw all those green check marks that show that everything should have been completed with the data that was in the type form within that 15-minute interval. So now I see that information in Google Sheets. I have a new message in Slack. So from operations, submitted an intake request, priority level is low, and the estimated completion date. So that's helpful for our teammates just to know what has been coming down, and we don't have to, put out a fire as fast as possible, which is great. And so now I'm going to look at my intake request. You'll see Tori Horde from operations has submitted. So the card has been created and then all of that information here has been populated. So that like extra information, I can go ahead and just email her directly because that email is populated. And then I can assign it to whoever needs to take on this project and they can take it from there. Now, I'm also supposed to receive an email. Yep, here we go. So this one landed in promotions, but here we go. It says, "Hi, Tori Horde." So it has my name in there. "We received your intake request for new POS system training." So I included the project title there. And then I just included a little bit of information so that it feels like a very custom put together email. Now you'll notice in my original project, I created a dashboard to kind of share a high level overview of the intake requests that we're receiving as an organization. So I wanted to have total requests, the department that they're coming from. So if I see that everybody's in IT, then maybe I need to make sure we have another partner within the IT learning and development space or something like that. It just gives us a clear view of what departments are requesting training most often. And then we can also see just a quick glance at the desired completion date. So if there's a lot of desired completion dates that are very near in the future, then we can kind of share this process a little bit earlier in the project process. We also have preferred delivery methods, so we can see if we're getting mostly self-paced e-learning requests, that we might need to invest in different tools or additional team members who are focused on e-learning and things like that. And then we can also see the priority status. So if we see that everyone has a high level of priority and it needs to be done within the next month, then we might change our processes as an organization a little bit to include training earlier in the process and just communicate this a little bit more effectively. So we're going to go ahead and build this for our new intake request form. So here I have another sheet. I'm just going to go ahead and title that dashboard. And this is not part of the automation. This is just something that's going to automatically update as this is filled out. So each of those lines that are going to come through in your sheet are going to populate the content in your dashboard. So you're going to go ahead and insert a chart. And the first type of chart I want to use is a scorecard chart. I think that's what it's called. So now I want to have a total number of participants or people, requesters who are submitting information. So this is we're going to change that, use row 1 as a header. And so here we have the count, and I want to customize the name of our title of this little chart, just so that we can see how many people are requesting training through our intake form process. So we've got number of requesters first. Now I also want to include another chart with the department, just so we can see where everybody's kind of coming from. So I did a pie chart here, and then I selected the data range. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to my other form, and the requester department here is column C. I want to make sure that row 1 is a header, and I'm going to go ahead and aggregate the data. And then I'm going to customize our pie chart so that those slices have a label. So we've only received one request, and it's from operations. Now I also want to include a chart title. So this is requester department, so we can see how many people are coming from which departments. Now I'm going to insert another chart. You'll see I used desired completion date. So here we'll insert a chart, and we'll use this bar chart, and we're going to go ahead and make it standard. So let's take the information for the desired completion date. So that is column I. And I'm going to go ahead and use row 1 as a header. And I'm going to customize the chart to say desired completion date. So now we have an idea of kind of when these are needing to be completed by. Now the dates look totally off, so I think that would be something to make sure is correct. So it gives us some data here. And that's something that you would want to have a baseline for like when is today. So that one you would have to play with a little bit. So then we want to go ahead and include a chart for the priority level, so we can see the data range for priority level here in column J. And I'm going to have this row 1 as a header. So now I want to include my slice label, and I also want to include a chart title. And the reason I like to include this data from the requester point of view is because for the leadership, they can see what the business is requesting, not necessarily what the learning and development team has discovered or found out through communication and things like that. This is directly from their perspective, like what they're requesting. So they're coming from this department, they're requesting this completion date, their priority level, and we can kind of see a snapshot directly from what the business needs, which is helpful. This will, of course, change. As you know, as learning and development professionals, we'll go into that kickoff meeting and we'll be like, okay, you really don't have any content at all, and it's going to take a lot longer for us to get this project up and rolling and things like that. So then the timeline might change and shift a little bit. So I would recommend having a separate either process. Maybe you have an intake request form that's for your kickoff calls. And so then as you're typing in as the learning and development professional into that form, then it's going to populate all the new information, and you can kind of compare it from your intake request from the business compared to the learning and development kickoff process, so that you can see kind of how those projects have changed potentially. And then the last one here I have is the preferred delivery method. I'm going to go ahead and insert another chart, and I'm going to use another pie chart. And then I'm going to change the data range to the format. So the desired format here. And the helpful thing about including multiple choice is that you can easily create these dashboards. So if you have choices for them to pick from and it's not just open text, then these dashboards can show you that pie chart super easily. And then I'm going to use row 1 as a header, aggregate the data. I'm going to select a slice label, and then I'm going to go ahead and title this as preferred delivery method, because I know there's definitely some stakeholders who want to do this as an in-person workshop, and then you realize that that includes training costs, that includes flight cost, hotel stays to go to all of the franchise locations, and it's just not feasible. So just knowing this upfront of what their desired delivery method is can be helpful, so that you know and you can be prepared to have those conversations to change the perspective sometimes and say this might be better as a different type of format. And then finally, I just want to go ahead and take away all of the lines here. So in this view tab here, you can click show and then grid lines, and takes away all of those grid lines. So currently you can see all of these options here are blue, but once you have additional content that's pulled into your training request form, then it will change colors. And you can also select different colors based on your brand and things like that within those tools here. So, okay, so now we have just built an automated intake workflow from beginning to end. And I hope that you can see different ways to use this within your organizations using different apps, different communication methods, and things like that, and just have it fit into your process. So, if you have any questions, I'm always available for questions or kind of ideating on things to help you figure out a different solution to your process or the needs of your business. So please email me, go to my website at torihoardlearning.com, and I'd love to support you in your automated workflow process. Thanks for watching.